Hey there, seniors. We are setting up for our main theme that we're going to revolve the entire school year, okay? And for you guys, it seems like a really generic English teacher response, but I'm going to tackle it from some places you may not expect, okay? So we're going to be talking about the power of language, and each of our units is going to discuss something that language can do, and not just in an English class, but in the world, because really that's what we should be focusing on. There's probably a few of you that may end up in education, and a few of you may end up being English teachers. But if we were just to look at, why writing's important in that realm, it would severely handicap what I can, show you that this stuff really can do. Because to be honest with you, it matters in every facet of living. Okay, so really important skills we're going to talk about here. So let me give you we have a huge paragraph. I'm just going to read it off my computer screen here. That gives us our overall essential question for this entire year. And question is cheating because there's several here, okay? So these are things we're going to tackle throughout the year. So things like, historically, both the spoken and written word have been essential in influencing societies all over the world. Do these forms of communication have less power, similar power, or more power today? So we're going to look at, whether speaking and writing, and we can look at them as two separate things, but do they have more power? Do they have less power? And we're going to talk about why. And that's a really big question. Obviously, that's why it's an essential question. We're going to talk about what are some ways that language impacts the world around us now. All right, think about that. And we can argue that it has more impact today. We can argue that it has less. And again, these are opinions, so there's no correct answer, but we want to be able to have intelligent opinions, okay? We're going to talk about why is it essential for students to become adept at using language properly, no matter what they choose to do in the future. A lot of you look at, writing essays and speaking in front of a class like, I'm not going to be an English teacher. Why do I have to know this stuff? Well, we're going to talk about that throughout the year because there are tons of reasons why these skills translate into pretty much anything you can think of, all right? Finally, and the last big question we're going to tackle here is, why is becoming skilled at using language essential, not just for individual futures, but our society as a whole? And we're going to talk about, and this is where we get into some definitely dangerous ground, but we're going to still go there, about how our culture today struggles because of our inability to properly use language, both written and spoken. How poor even the people we see as leaders in our country and in our states and in our cities, even how bad they are at this and how we can improve that and what the world looks like if people are good at communication, okay? So let's kind of begin. And now in class, we're going to discuss this and debate it a little bit, but let's just kind of, for those of you who are watching this at home and aren't here to be in class, or those of you who maybe, for whatever reason weren't totally on board during class and need some, a little bit of reminder, let's look at the big debate topic I used. And what we hit was, what primary purpose does language serve in our world? And we're going to kind of open that up for discussion to everybody, okay? Is it about, people say things like communication. Okay, well, does that mean me communicating to my wife or me communicating to my best friend, just us talking about small talk and things like that? When we say communication, that's a big category. What do we mean? Well, is it for legal reasons? We have to have understanding of language, both written and spoken, when we end up with contracts or signing a mortgage or, a credit card statement, any of these types of things. Obviously, language is important. What about for argumentation? Is that its primary purpose for that, so that, I can convince you of how I feel and try to change your mind to see things my way? Is it just for conveying information in general? These directions for how to get from one place to the next, that sort of thing. Is it primarily for commercial purposes, trying to sell me something? You want me to buy a specific car and spend more money than I have. Is that where language becomes it's at its strongest? Is it something else than what we listed? Is it all of these things? Now, obviously, it's all of these contribute, but we're going to be looking at what, its primary purposes are, And one of the things you should see right away is that it really does apply in all of these, because language is everywhere, all right? You can't avoid it. Being able to properly speak and not properly write as much, although we'll talk about it at the end of this, but definitely properly speak is just such a key element of, being successful as an adult. All right. So let me kind of give you a heads up about the year, because that's really what this video is for. So tell you what we're going to be doing this year so that there's a plan. All right, so this year we're going to tackle various angles of this topic. Here's a preview of how we're going to continue. So we're going to start with the power of language as manipulation. And you're going to see the theme here is it says the power of language as, and I'll have ... and then what it does. In this instance, it's manipulation. Now, I have to admit something real quick. I made a mistake when I was issuing summer reading. Initially, when I set this up, I wanted you guys to read 1984, which very easily demonstrates languages manipulation. But I gave you the plague instead, mainly because of what's going on in our world today. I know probably every one of you struggled with that book, probably didn't like it a whole lot, but when we talk about it the first 2 weeks, hopefully that'll change. But we can still see language being used as manipulation in there. And really, to be honest with you, it may be better than 1984 because it allows us to apply it to today too. Because a lot of the manipulation we see in the plague, we're seeing today in our world too. All right. We're also going to read a few essays or excerpts of essays from a book I love by George Orwell, a collection of his essays called All Art is Propaganda. So that'll be the first unit. That's the first 4 weeks of school we'll do that. The second 4, we're going to talk about the power of language to define our heroes and villains. All right, so think about that for a second. How, the way a story is told dictates who you're supposed to cheer for and who you're not. Because we all like different things. So how can a million people read a book and still find themselves cheering for the same person for the most part? And even though we all have different, beliefs, we have different morals, yet we all this is the good guy and this is the bad guy. So we're looking at how language helps us define that, not only in fiction, but in the real world, all right? Because think about this. In our world, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson are heroes. Do you think the British see them as the same? So, again, depending on how the story's told, one guy's the good guy, one's the bad. So we're going to look at how language defines that. We're going to set that up mainly with the book, this ancient Anglo-Saxon text, Beowulf, which is one of the earliest Western forms of writing we see. We'll talk about it a lot, along with some fragments of some Anglo-Saxon poetry that existed in that time. We're also going to use a modern book called Grendel by John Gardner, and all of my classes are going to use that, which is really told from the perspective of the monster in Beowulf. So we get to see how when Grendel's the star of the book, all of a sudden things change. And I think it's college prep. You guys will see this again show up when we read Frankenstein later. All right, our third chapter, and this will be for the beginning of second quarter, is going to be our third unit, is going to be the power of language to use the past to shape the future. Because think about like history books and things like that. We're also going to see a lot of the Renaissance writing, how writing was able to shape what people thought and how the world was perceived, okay? We're going to also read Paradise Lost and Inferno excerpts. We're not going to read the whole thing. Honors, you'll read a little more than CP. But we are going to read some of that. And that dictates things like how we view hell today, even as Christians. Many of our concepts of hell are, or the ideas in our head of hell are actually from these books, not biblical. Now, hell is definitely biblical, but the visions we have of it are a little bit more based on these fictional books than of what the Bible actually says, and we're going to see how that shapes up. The last thing we'll do before we take exams will be the power of language to challenge the power of language to alter our beliefs and ideals. So how language used properly can completely send you, I'm over here firmly believing this, to all of a sudden I believe this. That's why it's so important not just to be able to use it, but to be language properly, but to be able to analyze how other people use it. All right, we're going to use Macbeth. Everyone's going to study Macbeth there. Very famous Shakespeare play, also a very short one compared to most of his stuff, so don't panic. Then we're going to also look at 17th and 18th century writings from England and from Europe in general. All right, then coming back in January, we'll tackle the power of language to change political and societal ideas. The last unit with Macbeth was about individual beliefs, but the next one we use is how it can change an entire culture's, morals and their grounding, okay? We'll look at Romantic era writing there, where we really see that start to show up, where, the way people felt about, things like relationships and love changed drastically in that time period. Also, college prep, you're going to read a book in that section called Frankenstein. Honors, you'll be doing a little bit more of it, like short stories and poetry, okay? Now, when we flip to the next unit, which will be the power of language to provide identity, Honors, you'll now read a book while CP won't. You're going to read a play by Oscar Wilde called The Importance of Being Earnest. Now, and then all of you are going to talk about Victorian era writing at this time period, all right? So that one's going to be about, how we use language to define who we are as people, okay? The last two for fourth quarter, you're going to do the power of language to affect change in our culture. And we're going to spend a little more time on this one than we do the others. We're going to use modernist and postmodernist, so current writings, really. And all of us are going to study a poem called The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, which came out in the early 20th century, all right? This one's going to be important. This is probably going to be our longest unit and our biggest one right there as we're wrapping up. Finally, you're going to do a project for me. All my classes, Honors, yours is look a little different than CP, but it's going to be from the power of language to impart a legacy. And we're going to do something to help you establish a legacy here for Cottage Hill during that time, okay? And that'll be how we end the year, all right? So just kind of a why we're doing this. Let me wrap up with some quick hit points here for you, all right? I will read a little bit. I have my computer, my notes here. They're angled a little weird because the back of my computer has all sorts of band stickers, and I didn't know if that was really appropriate for these videos, so I'm angling it away. But the first one says, most people seem to think that studying to be more effective as a writer or speaker is an academic discipline purely. So a lot of you see this as, I'm not going to college, I'm never going to write another essay. Or once I go to college, I'm going to major in, chemistry. I'm not going to have to write an essay. And I want you to know that that is such a wrong statement, all right? That is one of the most wrong statements that can be uttered in a classroom, to be honest with you. Most wrong, wrongest, I'm not sure. But whichever way that works, it is one of the, worst things you can say in here, because the honest truth is you will use these things, and we're going to talk about throughout the year how speaking particularly, but writing as well, is going to show up. Let me move on to this next part. It says speaking will always be something that's going to be a part of your life, even if it's only talking to your family and workers at various stores you frequent. If you become wealthy, your parents have money, they leave you a ton, you never have to work a day of your life, you're still going to talk to your family, to your spouse and your kids. You're still going to, have to interact with people at, a grocery store. So, this ability to properly, communicate is a skill that's definitely needed. It says being able to convey your ideas and identify how others are doing so, and that's really one of the keys, is to see how other people are using language. Is a skill that will make your life a lot easier. It says writing is a way to improve your speaking and thinking, which is why we do it. Plus, it allows you to polish it. So in an instance where instead of having to speak spur of the moment with someone and do this all off the top of your head, writing allows you to plan ahead and to kind of carefully tailor it. My AP classes are going to get to talk. My AP 11th grade class, that's all we do the entire year is talk about proper argumentation. But we're still going to let some of that bleed into your class too. It says writing is a way to improve your speaking. Sorry, I read that one already. Let me skip ahead. It says, if none of this is enough to sway you, know that there are people out there who are masters of communication, and they're not all moral people, and they will manipulate you and how you feel, and they'll have you believing something strongly that really isn't true, but they can convince you. It's how things like cults occur, because the people who fall victim to that typically are not really great with their own usage of language, and they allow other people to manipulate it and change the way they think and to get them to believe something crazy. All right, and we want to avoid that happening to you. We want you to be able to have your beliefs and hold firm and strong to them because you have a foundation, and I know how you're trying to trick me and it's not going to work. That sort of thing, okay? So my goal this year is to make you a better thinker and improve your life no matter where you're going to go once you cross that stage in May. Some of you are going to go into college where, again, there's you're going to see language used on an even higher level there, not just with your professors, but other students. You're going to meet some brilliant people there who, are going to, do this naturally. So we want to prepare you for that. On the job, guys, if you're a good writer or speaker, you will sail through promotions in your job usually, because those are the people that, even if your idea isn't as good as someone else's, if you present yours better than they do, yours is probably going to be accepted. So we have to understand that these skills are key, even if it's something as simple as writing an email to your boss, all right? So all of this is important. You may go into the military. Well, I definitely won't need it there. Sure you will. Imagine you're, a commanding officer and you have to convince, your platoon to do something, and you can't just, I know in the military it's like, well, I give an order and they follow it. But there's a difference in following something because you have to and following something because you believe in it. And if you can inspire belief in people, you can do anything, all right? So anyway, this skill, more than any other you'll learn, is speaking. And by this I mean speaking and writing. These skills are going to allow you more opportunity in your life than you could ever imagine. And that's why we want to spend our entire year this year revolving around them, okay? Yes, there's going to be literature. Some of it's going to bore you. Some of it you'll find exciting. But that is just the device we're going to use to try to convince you of these ideas, all right? So anyway, I'm excited about this year. I hope you are. I hope you'll think about that when you hit one of those dry points. When you're in Macbeth and you're like, oh, this is boring. But just remember that there's a purpose to it, and that, we have to use these to get you to the points I'm trying to make, all right? So anyway, I'm looking forward to having you in class. I'm looking forward to this year and, being back in a classroom and teaching. It's so exciting and thrilling, and I hope this can help kind of give you at least a little bit of excitement, let you know that we do have a method behind all of this madness. So anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. And I will, see you in the classroom soon.